Welcome, everyone. We'll just wait for another minute or two. We have 130 participants now. I think we can begin now. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, from wherever you're joining, and welcome to today's session on effective strategies for pharmaceutical management. My name is UNITAR, and I work here at the UN Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR. And I'll be your moderator for this session. We have an exciting lineup of speakers: Dr. Harpreet Kaur, Dr. Andrew Brown, who will share their expertise and insights on complexities of pharmaceutical supply chains, best practices, innovation, and regulatory compliance. And we encourage you to engage throughout the session. Before we begin, a quick housekeeping note. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen, not in the chat, at the Q&A tool. I'd also like to ask for just 2-3 minutes of your time to fill out a poll that should be appearing on your screens right now. This will help us to get to know you better, where you're joining from, your background, and your interests. I'll give 2 minutes for that. Thank you for your engagement. I'll just interpret the results. Let's take a quick look. Most of the participants we have a great gender distribution. And then the most popular age group is 30-40 years old, followed by 40-50. Most of the participants come from Africa and Middle Eastern countries, followed by South Asia. The academic background is in pharmacy diploma and pharmacy master's/PhD, or logistics and supply chain. Most of the participants have over 15 years of working experience, followed by 6 and 10 years. And they work in the NGO and private sector, followed by the national government. The current area of work is in supply chain and management. And the organization type they work for is wholesale and distribution / hospital, clinical, and other sectors. Thank you so much for engaging. It's aligned with our usual audience demographics. It's wonderful to see such a diverse group joining us today. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker, Dr. Harpreet Kaur. Dr. Kaur is a part of the Faculty Department of Online Education at the Empower School of Health. Dr. Kaur, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Am I audible? Thank you. To begin with the presentation, I would first of all like to introduce myself. I am Dr. Harpreet Kaur, and I work in the capacity of an associate professor with Empower School of Health. And right now, here I'll be taking you through our newly launched postgraduate diploma in pharmaceutical management. To start with, Empower as an organization works with a vision to contribute to the educational, economic, and sustainable development of the local communities through internationally recognized online academic programs. To continue forward with its vision, here is the impact that Empower has. So till date, we have trained more than 20,000 individuals in supply chain across 100 countries. We deliver both short-term and long-term educational courses, and we have partnered with academic organizations, governments, donors, and we have also partnered with Gavi, Global Fund, Gates Foundation, MSH, Chemonics, and other organizations. We also deliver leadership training to CEOs and senior leadership in the domain of supply chain. So this slide is a snapshot of our key academic partners. So as you all can see that we have partners with ministries, with public health institutes, with academic organizations, and both national and international organizations. So talking of accreditations, our programs are all accredited by well-known bodies. So we are certified by ASIC from UK. We are also ISO certified, and UNITAR has been our key partner, and our programs are in conjunction with UNITAR. And recently we were also provided this FIBA seal for quality assurance in higher education. So if you see Empower, if you see this figure, this pyramid depicts the kind of courses that Empower provides. So if you look at the base of the pyramid, we have short-term courses, certificate courses, over 30 courses are there in our domain. And talking of diplomas, both postgraduate and diploma courses, which are generally 6 months to 12 months long, we have 5 courses in that. And we also have 2 master's courses. So moving forward with our newly launched course, which is Postgraduate Diploma in Pharmaceutical Management, which is certified by FIP, and again, it is in conjunction with UNITAR. So looking at the structure of the PGD program, we will have 12 online modules, which are divided into 2 semesters, and the course will be completed over a duration of a year. And it also has a component of a small dissertation to it. So talking about what is the need of this program or rationale behind this. So the postgraduate diploma is designed to bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical application in the pharmaceutical industry. So many pharmacy graduates, they enter the workforce with strong academic foundations, but they often lack the managerial or leadership skills that are required to thrive in this environment. So we have aligned the best global practices. And in this PGD program, this will empower pharmacists to take on leadership roles. It will also help them to enhance their efficiency, to work in healthcare team, to contribute to improving patient outcomes and access to quality medicine. So it is a crucial step for those who are looking to advance their careers and make a meaningful impact in the pharmaceutical management sector. So moving on to the next slide. So this course provides participants with a comprehensive understanding of industry intricacies, regulatory compliances, strategic planning, and communication skills, which are tailored to the pharmaceutical context. And the program is designed to be affordable and accessible, and it caters especially to the needs of low middle income countries. And our course will equip the students to excel in the dynamic field of pharmaceutical management and offering avenues for growth and skill development. Now, considering the learning objectives of this program, so the students who will, successfully complete this course, they will be able to choose medicine supplies based on pharmacoeconomic analysis. engage in decision-making process concerning the formulation of medicine policy, essential drug list, treatment protocols, and they will be able to oversee financial aspects of pharmacy operations and enhanced organizational financial performance. And it will also offer educational opportunities to encourage students to think critically and advance as a lifelong learner. So talking about the learning outcomes. So on successful completion of these programs, the learners will be able to identify what exactly pharmaceutical system is, how it impacts the universal health coverage and thereby their health outcomes. They will also be able to develop effective communication, marketing, and human resource strategies tailored to the pharmaceutical industries. They'll also learn about research methodology, critical analysis, and project execution in pharmacy domain. They'll be able to navigate drug regulations, health supply chain challenges, and pharmacoinformatic techniques. They'll be able to evaluate the impact of medicine policy and financing mechanism and execute research projects and communicate their findings effectively through the report. Now, talking about the financial planning option for students. So the payment terms can be divided into 6 small installments within the 8 months of commencement of this course. We also provide scholarships to students. And I think for Women Day, we are also providing special discount for women researchers and women pharmacists. So I think the details are there in the chat. And the eligibility criteria for financial aid is, of course, first come, first serve basis. So you can reach out to our course coordinator to find out more about scholarships. The information is also there on our website. So the course is curated by very renowned industry advisors and faculty. So on screen, you can see we have industry leaders from across the domains who have contributed meaningfully and effectively to the program. So here is the link for our course. I would request my team to paste in the link and the email ID to reach out to the team. And moving forward for this, now I would like to hand over the presentation to Dr. Andrew. But before that, I would like to introduce Dr. Andrew Brown. So we are really honored to welcome you, Andrew, as our distinguished speaker for the webinar on effective strategies for pharmaceutical management. So Dr. Brown is a senior principal technical advisor at MSH. He specializes in pharmaceutical system strengthening, health workforce development, and strategic planning in low and middle income countries. And he has led capacity building initiatives, regulatory improvements, and leadership programs to enhance health systems globally. MSH and Empower have been partners for several years, and their collective vision to develop quality content for courses has led us to collaborate on courses on data management, pharmaceuticals, and other courses. So Dr. Brown has been a valued expert in our past courses and projects. He brings invaluable real-world insights and has significantly enriched our learning programs. At Empower, we are committed to bring forward a diverse range of high-quality subject matter experts to foster impactful learning and knowledge sharing. So I welcome Dr. Brown here, who is one of the leading experts in the field, to talk about the topic. Over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Praniti. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Thank you for that very generous introduction. And thank you, everyone, for taking your valuable time to be with us today. We're going to go on a journey together over the next 30 minutes that will be fast. There'll be lots of interesting content. And I think by the end of it, you'll want to know more. What would help me is if in the chat you could put your name, the organization, and what country you're from, if you're happy to share that information, so that we can see a little bit about the people who are with us. We had a great summary earlier. As we move along together, we're going to try and do a couple of things. just one moment. Sorry, for some reason my slides have come up on the shared incorrectly. Okay, so in the chat, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you if you could just put in the chat just a phrase about an issue that you're experiencing in the pharmaceutical system that you're involved in. Whether you're from government or an implementing partner, please tell us in the chat, what's one of the issues that you're experiencing? For example, is it low quality medicine? Is it that you have an out of stock? Is it that you can't get the workforce you need? Or you're having trouble with particular regulation activities? If you could just type those in the chat, it will give us an idea of what you might be experiencing. On our journey today, we're going to go through a couple of different aspects. We're going to think about why a pharmaceutical system is important, and we're going to dive a little bit more deeply on a couple of elements. We're going to look at supply chain, we're going to look at regulation, and we're going to look at some of the IT aspects. We're going to consider some of the particular issues that we're experiencing, some of the trends, and also some of the innovations that you can be watching out for as you take on your role as an expert trying to strengthen the pharmaceutical system where you work. So firstly, a couple of things that should shock you and want you to work in this. A number on this particular webinar will have seen this particular problem that happened a couple of years ago where there was a number of children died from cough mixture. In Gambia, there were 66. There were also others in different countries. And there was a contaminant in that cough mixture. So the particular issue was to do with the quality of the product that resulted in death. Why? Perhaps the regulatory systems were not strong enough. Perhaps the supply chain was not secure enough. Perhaps a number of reasons, but this was a particular issue, and it's happened more than once in recent years. What also should scare you is this study that said that up to 500,000 people have been killed by fake medicines in sub-Saharan Africa. 500,000. And this Statista report, which you can download and have a look at, also gives you other concepts in terms of the amount of money involved, 44.7 million, the tons of medication. It's a huge problem. And again, aspects of this problem are because of our lack of strength in pharmaceutical systems. Another study looking at a different aspect of pharmaceutical care, looking at use. Inappropriate prescribing of antibiotics may aid the development of antibiotic resistance, which a lot of people are describing as the next pandemic, the silent pandemic in our world. And this study looked in Madagascar, Senegal, and Cambodia. Children under 2 looked at the prescriptions and looked at their diagnosis. And a lot of the children did not require an antibiotic, but were given one anyway. And these 3 points should be of concern to us. We also know from WHO that up to 1/3 of the world's population, particularly in poorer countries of the world, have a lack of access to medicines. 1/3. These issues should prompt us to do more in pharmaceutical systems management. But the first question I want to ask you, after thinking about why we need to be involved in this, is what makes up a pharmaceutical system. And in the objectives to this webinar and the promotional material you saw, you will have seen the emphasis on supply chain. But I'd like to take a moment to get you to have a look at this pharmaceutical systems pathway. This pathway takes you on a journey, the top left, about medicines being developed from an industry perspective, and takes you on a journey all the way down to the patient. On that journey, there are clinical trials, there's manufacturing, there's the importance of licensing and inspection for quality. There is registration, there's laboratory testing and market surveillance, vigilance or pharmacovigilance. This is the regulatory system. Then we move on to financing. Medicines are not available unless they can be afforded by countries and individuals. Supply chain in green. We talk about quantification, we talk about procurement, we talk about storage and distribution. I want you to particularly note that supply chain is only one small part of the overall pharmaceutical systems pathway, but is often the part that gets the most emphasis. But you can get medicines to a health facility, even in the hands of a health provider. But unless they are prescribing appropriately, dispensing accurately, unless the medicines are used appropriately, then you're not going to have changes in health outcomes. Universal health coverage is not going to happen. So one key take-home point for today is really understanding the breadth of the pharmaceutical system and these components. The next aspect is, what are the parts of that system we need to work on in order to make it stronger? Now, the pharmaceutical system is an subset of the health system. And we like to take a total view and say we're looking to have access to an appropriate use of safe, effective, quality assured, and affordable, other different components. And on the screen, this arc that's here talks about the need for us to think about governance, human resources, service delivery, information, and financing. And for those of you who are good students of WHO materials, will recognize this as being the building blocks of the system. And as we move down, we're looking at safety, efficacy, and quality. And for the pharmacists there, you'll be able to see the 4 A's of access, focusing on use, with again a reminder of the importance of community in relationship to this. Complex systems, lots of components, we need to be systematic. Again, I just want you to read these 2 definitions. One on the left is about procurement and supply chain management. One on the left is about the pharmaceutical system more broadly. Now, the reason I'm drawing it to your attention in this way is often in supply chain, we think about visibility, velocity, and we want to minimize variability. How do we get product A from its manufacture to where it needs to be? And then a number of us think that once we've done that, our job is done. Well, actually, it's not done, because we need to make sure, if we want to change health outcomes, that medicines need to be accessible. And the red on the screen shows that difference. So one of the key points internationally is that we need to move away from thinking of medical products and medical equipment as being an input commodity and take a holistic view that takes into account the aspects of the medicines pathway that we mentioned. There's a great paper that helps to describe that. I'm not going to labor the point so much, but I really want you to take home the message that pharmacy system does not equal supply chain system. They are integrated components of an overall pharmaceutical systems management. As we continue this journey together, I want to now take a little while to help unpack a couple of different trends and innovations across aspects of the pharmaceutical system. This is not meant to be comprehensive. It's meant to whet your appetite, encourage you to go deeper. And when you have access to these slides, which the content of which is being made available from a number of our colleagues in management sciences for health that have been developing this material for some time, there will be a range of resources at the end to help you go deeper. But as Harpreet mentioned before, there is also a course you can take through Empower in order to have an even more deeper understanding. So let's go together. So the first is we want to talk about supply chain management. We noticed in the early survey, a number of you on the call are here because of your interest in supply chain management. This is the red box that's associated with our medicines, our pharmaceutical systems pathway. So first of all, some of the trends, and of course there'll be others. Supply chain, since COVID and during COVID, has become famous and sometimes infamous. There's this greater understanding of the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities of healthcare supply chains. There's been lots of webinars, blog posts, news outlets, and publications for you to go deeper on this particular issue. But what's coming out of that is the importance for greater policy decisions, the importance of task force in countries, particularly around the need for commodities for outbreaks, such as COVID-19 and others. The other thing is that affordability and accessibility of life-saving products has come to the fore. We'll note that there was lots of issues around equity in terms of accessing vaccine, for example. Lots of products were out of stock, etc. But resiliency and understanding the importance of supply chain has really come forth. This resilience and agility is particularly important. Resiliency is the ability to prepare for, absorb, and recover from these potential problems, and the agility is to be able to quickly plan, source, make, deliver products to respond to the challenge. Many countries were caught off guard when it came to the supplies needed, and a number of you on this call will be familiar with that. I'm mentioning it as a global trend because we're continuing to focus on resiliency, agility, particularly in the area of pandemic preparedness. There is a suggestion that the next pandemic is going to be less than 50 years away. We've got a lot to change and a lot to improve. So these are some of the particular trends. Another trend which will come out, because we're going to talk now about innovations, is the improved use of technology. And these are innovations are under the heading of how do we improve resiliency and agility? Well, one is enhanced visibility, putting in data and technological systems that allow end-to-end visibility of product, even down to the patient. Strategic procurements and stockpiles. This localization, globalization shift, where we need to put more ability on continents where the products are needed. More about the use of private sector. So for middle and high income countries, private sector is particularly involved and well integrated. But for health products in a number of low income countries, private sector is still a small component. Workforce. A number of you on the call will be familiar with the People That Deliver initiative and looking at different ways of professionalizing workforce, this greater engagement, and also green supply chains for sustainability. A particular thing that I haven't noted here, but as it's hidden under enhanced visibility, is the increased use of technology, particularly around artificial intelligence, for more rapidly being able to determine quantities and for ordering, and looking at trends, not just looking at use patterns that have happened historically, but predictive analytics that's looking into the future to see what particular products and how much you might need, ways to try and help to reduce cost, but also looking at okay, the grey box is narrated. Is that better? Thanks for that. I can't see the chat, so now anymore. So moving on, just to mention, MSH worked in a number of countries globally, but within the Philippines, we particularly looked there at a whole national strategic plan for supply chain management, and also an implementation roadmap, and helping government to understand that they have a role as the steward and oversight of not only supply chain, but pharmaceutical systems. And it doesn't mean that they would be involved in the delivery of every single component of that particular system. So this aspect of being prepared and moving for the future. Again, in our talks today, this is expressed in terms of hitting on a couple of high topics. I want to talk about information and data systems, which I alluded to in the earlier supply chain quick reference. Now, these systems are cross-cutting, and there are systems involved in regulatory, which I'll talk a little bit more later, but also in financing, in supply chain, and also in use, range of different systems. So a couple of the global trends. Again, this is probably nearly old news, but the Internet of Medical Things is growing. And this is the whole range of technologies at the point of care with patients, etc., that are generating large amounts of data and remote monitoring that helps us to more quickly be able to understand what's happening with the patients. Obviously, in low and middle income countries, these particular trends are small, but growing. Internet access and connectability is growing exponentially in all countries of the world, but particularly low and middle income countries. There's this trend to move towards a tailored patient experience. But the big trend is about big data and big analytics. You're using multiple types of data sources, using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and particularly looking at visualization of infrastructure and dashboards and the visualization of your products through the supply chain, and particularly visualizations about critical points of out of stocks, near out of stocks, expiry dates, and points that need attention. So analytics with visualization that helps people to take action more quickly. A couple of pharmaceutical system specific innovations, which may interest some of you. there's been a development of global standards for assessing regulatory systems. So global benchmarking tool is one of those. There's also some development on interoperability standards. There is a particular technology called Vigiflow, which is an open access pharmacovigilance data system that can be linked to Vigibase in Uppsala, WHO, to allow more global sharing of data around adverse drug reactions and fast healthcare interoperability resources, and also cloud migration using the cloud. Of course, in a number of countries, they don't like data being on the cloud. They don't like it removed from the country. But with increased levels of security and approach, cloud data and the use of large end analytics with cloud data has become very helpful. I was talking to a gentleman from IBM a few months ago, and he was experimenting with some predictive approaches for quantification of antimalarials. And he was using big data freely available on the internet to be able to choose a country and suggest what the quantification should be for different animalarials. And he compared that to the data that the country used and developed themselves, which took quite a lot longer and a lot more money to do. And he was within a 40% accuracy. Now that sounds like it's a big error, but when it comes to predictive analytics, that 40% for initial first go using big data is quite accurate. And for those of you involved in quantification, you know that there is some differences. But just pointing out this use of technology. Now, one of the things I just want to emphasize here is because there's a big push for technology, we know that technology by itself is not going to solve our problems. We need to have strong systems first. And this slide is simply to say that if you are putting technology into your pharmaceutical systems and supply chain, please take care, plan, and think about the people, the technology, the processes, and have a change management approach that really engages users and has the resources necessary to integrate your IT information system, whether it's a system for your procurement, system for your logistics, for your regulation, or for your use and adverse drug reaction reporting, and particularly being able to measure the impact so those who are investing in this can see. Again, it's a quick remark, but often we don't take the time for our IT intervention. So I'm just emphasizing that on our call today. I want to look at medical product quality assurance. A number of you will be aware of USP, United States Pharmacopoeia, that have large of international investments in helping particularly industry and governments with their quality laboratories, strengthening those laboratories. And these couple of comments come from them. These global trends, a little bit of a busy slide, but this really focusing more on quality testing and adopting reliance and regional harmonization network. In other words, the amount of laboratory technology and the expertise needed to have quality control laboratories is difficult to have them in every country, although they're working towards that. And so reliance is where you're looking at the work that other countries have done in order to say that you're happy with that. And that takes some politics. We'll talk about the National Africa approach to national regulatory authorities shortly. But also risk-based approaches. So what national regulatory authorities and laboratories are realizing, can't test everything, can't go deep on everything. So we're looking at the molecules, the products, and companies where there may be an increased risk for some reason. And so focusing resources on that in order to have better use of resources. There's a big push on local production and pharmaceutical sector development strategies, particularly after COVID. Lots of you will be aware of a range of webinars and initiatives to increase local production, particularly in Africa. Asia is very well positioned for local manufacture, but that's something that's happening as a trend. There's expedited review pathways and integrated management systems. A number of you will be aware that to get approval for the vaccines for COVID-19 happened a lot faster than other regulatory approvals. And they've been able to experiment with and justify express pathways, particularly in times of pandemics, and they had good results with that. The other big push in terms of a trend is the strengthening of regulatory systems. I mentioned the GBT, the WHO global benchmarking tool, and internationally looking to move national regulatory authorities from a maturity level of 3 to a maturity level of 3 and ultimately to a maturity level of 4, which are stable regulatory authorities that we can really rely on for the quality of medicines. Another aspect that's perhaps a bit more supply chain specific, but through the whole of the supply chain and pharmacy system is GS1, Global Standard 1, track and trace products in the supply chain. Being able to identify a bottle at the level of the patient and where it came from right through the supply chain. Use of blockchain and other aspects for that purpose. So these are the trends when it comes to quality. Some of the innovations, emergency use authorization, we're familiar with that, but trying to ensure that national regulatory authorities have robust procedures in place to be able to activate such emergency use authorization in times of pandemics and absolute need, and doing so in a way that does not put patients at risk. Advanced manufacturing technologies, so the biotechnologies associated with vaccines, risk-based registration and inspection, etc. I mentioned. This in-house versus reliance for testing. Lots of remote technologies are starting to be used for approaches for auditing organizations, manufacturers, for example. Medical devices. And don't forget, in healthcare, it's not just the medical products which we need to assure of their quality. It is also medical devices and preventative maintenance and calibration of lab equipment. So again, sounds like something we should really be understanding, but innovation is how to do these things better and how to increase the overall capacity and quality across more countries. Let's quickly move on to regulation and pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance is adverse drug reaction reporting. Now, on our pharmaceutical system pathway, we've got the blue, which is the registration. Now, there is market surveillance and safety or vigilance that occurs when a product is registered and goes through trials. And down the end, of course, is post-market pharmacovigilance takes place where we're monitoring for adverse effects, particularly at the patient level, and all healthcare providers are involved in that. So this is what we're talking about regulation pharmacovigilance. Again, a bit of a busy slide. These slides will be available as a resource for you, but again, similar trends to the quality laboratories, improving efficiency in regulation, this convergence of standards around harmonization, looking at this balance between respecting the sovereignty of countries, but also realizing that countries can come to agreements to have good reliance and good review practices, because the workload is immense if each country of the world has to go in deep with regard to the dossiers for every product and every medicine, as well as medical piece of equipment or sundry. Quality management systems are also being put in place. So this is the system side of things, and particularly trying to rely on other countries. So here terms about reliance and harmonization. Emergency use authorization, increased collaboration, we've mentioned, and regulation of medical devices. Also global metrics. In addition to the global benchmarking tool, which is used to help develop institutional development plans, there is an initiative called the Coalition of Interested Parties, which is a network led by WHO to try and bring interested parties together. You can look about this more on the website. And also more recently, there was published some international data standards for IT systems to use in the pharmaceutical regulation space. So a trend to watch out for. Again, I've mentioned a couple of these already. I just want to choose a couple. You can have a read through yourself. Adverse event following immunization. Some of you will be aware that there were these intentional efforts because the vaccine was relatively new and went through an expedited track, that there was thousands and thousands of patients followed after injection in order to look at safety, and cohorts were followed. So that was an interesting innovation. The open access platforms. So we now have open RIMS and PVIMs, which are open access software that are available. And we have greater digitized regulatory systems moving forward. and also mobile apps and social media network analysis, which is quite interesting innovations for the purpose of identifying and reporting adverse drug reactions. So these are particular innovations that are happening in the regulatory space. For those of you who want to dig a bit deeper, one of the countries that MSH had been working in up until recently was Rwanda, working with their NRA and functional stable authority, aiming to get them to 3. And again, it's a multifaceted. You remember that arc I showed you before? We're looking at the people, we're looking at the planning, we're looking at the IT systems, and we're looking at the strategy and approach and capacity strengthening. And again, just pointing out, if we're trying to strengthen any of these systems, it needs to be a systematic and considered approach in order to be able to get to the maturity level that we're looking for. Now, again, you'll note that I didn't go to each of those areas of the pharmaceutical systems pathway in detail. I just chose a couple just to whet your appetite and have a look. What I'd like to do is just to think about oxytocin as a moment. This is a molecule that is life-saving. It's used at birth to reduce postpartum hemorrhage, so that's bleeding after birth, which is a big problem in a number of countries and is certainly have high rates of mortality for the mother and also the child. Oxytocin, life-saving. And so if we're going around these aspects of the semicircle, governance, human resources, information, excuse me, just want to point out a couple of things. So for oxytocin, there needs to be guidance about the storage of oxytocin, that it can be stored with vaccines in the cold chain. Now, this, for people who are EPI, Extended Program of Immunization purists, will say, no, it's not possible. Well, there's actually guidance was put out by UNICEF with WHO and Gavi to say it is possible, it is allowed and necessary because it's not heat stable. So this is a governance issue. From a quality, a couple of studies have shown that oxytocin not registered in 2 of 9 countries, or 2 of 9 countries only had 1 or 2 brands registered, but the other brands weren't registered. With regard to regulation, needs to be labeling for storage in cold chain. Now, there is on the market a oxytocin that's not labeled properly and is not heat stable. Needs to be kept in the fridge. Storage. These guidelines, SOPs and training and quantification, there needs to be good and important quantification. We're involved in a situation where there was a particular country was overstocked because there was a miscommunication between the donor procurement group and the government group. But using the data systems, they were able to transfer the stock to another country in order for it to be used. So the point I want to make about this oxytocin here is simply to say that an example of a molecule where we need to think about governance, quality, regulation, storage, and quantification as aspects of the pharmaceutical system, just to try and make that real for you. Now, before we go to questions, I just want to play you this particular video. So let's hope we can make this work for you. It's just a couple of minutes.
Why must we urgently strengthen pharmaceutical systems in low and middle income countries? The pharmaceutical system is a subsystem of the broader health system and plays a pivotal role in healthcare delivery. When managed and used appropriately, pharmaceuticals and health technologies save countless lives, while saving countries millions of dollars in their health budgets. Conversely, weak pharmaceutical systems can be fatal, and this is often most evident in low and middle income countries. Currently, nearly 2 billion people globally lack access to basic medicines, and cost escalations and shortages are an ever-present threat. Substandard and falsified medical products is another catastrophic issue. 66 children in the Gambia are thought to have been killed by unsafe medicine. And this isn't an isolated incident. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, 500,000 people are thought to be killed by substandard and falsified medical products each year. According to the World Health Organization, around 10% of medical products in low and middle income countries fall into this substandard or falsified category. And that number is between 19 to 50% in sub-Saharan African nations. This indicates weak pharmaceutical systems and highlights the need for urgent action. Stronger pharmaceutical systems are required to ensure the affordability, safety, efficacy, and quality of medical products, and to get the right products to the right places at the right time. For example, if a medicine is frequently out of stock or the official source is unaffordable, this leaves room for alternative providers. To tackle this, every element of the pharmaceutical system must be strengthened. This includes ensuring that the right products of the right quality are always available, and that there are financing schemes available to make medicines affordable. There is an immediate need for stakeholders to shift away from viewing medicine solely as an input commodity or a supply chain concern. Instead, we must take a more holistic and comprehensive view that recognizes the various structures and interactions within the broader health system. By strengthening pharmaceutical systems, which includes ensuring appropriate regulation of medical products and technologies and strengthening supply chain functions, we will improve access to safe and quality-assured medicines at affordable prices, thereby helping to improve health outcomes. To strengthen pharmaceutical systems, we need governments to prioritize interventions and allocate sufficient resources, donors to increase investments, implementing partners and technical organizations to think and act systematically, and patients to demand the availability of quality medical products and technologies. We all have a role to play. What is yours?
That particular video is available on YouTube, and thank you to my colleagues who have helped with the development of that particular video.
Why must we urgently strengthen pharmaceutical systems in...
And it was so impressive, I wanted to show you a second time. So it's at this point that I finished the main presentation. So I just wanted to now really open up the floor to questions. But before I do is just to comment that the MSH is a NGO. It's been working in health system strengthening around medicines and supply chain for some 50 years. And our particular approach is to really make sure we work alongside local actors in country contexts in order to really help facilitate change that those on the call who are in countries are most responsible for and can really make that difference. I hope that what I've presented today has given you a greater passion for understanding more. You've got those courses that were alluded to go deeper. And I hand back to Suyona for questions. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown, for your comprehensive and informative session. We saw the chat being active and bombarded with questions and answers. I'll just read out what you said are the the countries of participants, the areas they work on, and the problems they indicated in the chat. The main countries are, among others, are Nigeria, Indonesia, Haiti, Ethiopia, South Africa, Rwanda, Malawi, Myanmar, Kenya, Zambia, India, Timor-Leste, Togo, Cameroon, US, Afghanistan, Nepal, Mali, Tanzania, among others. Areas are the ministries of health, district health office, people work for WHO, quality assurance, pharmacists. We had researchers, undergrad students studying pharma program, supply chain advisors, pharma business.
Sorry to interrupt, Suyona. So we are getting messages in the chat. Can you please speak a bit louder?
Sure. I will. Yeah. Am I audible now?
To me, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and the main issues participants indicated are the regulatory issues, difficulties in conforming to those regulations, quality of pharmaceuticals, inadequate control of medicine distribution, and inadequate financing related to the recent US aid cut, supply chain disruptions because of that, stock out, workforce, managing commodities, and then access to good quality information. We now have time for a Q&A session. We had many great sections coming through the Q&A tool and the chat, which really shows the level of interest in today's discussion, or Dr. Brown, or how he made the people interested in today's discussion. I'll go ahead and direct the first question. Is there a regulatory framework for pharmaceutical industries for all countries to follow, particularly in the sub-Saharan Africa?
Thank you so much. So the global benchmarking tool, which is freely available from WHO, outlines standard for pharmaceutical regulation for everyone. So you can look at that to see what the general standard in country. For countries, for private sector specifically, there are two particular sub areas. It's the Code of Good Manufacturing Practice, which is also available, that gives a standard for manufacturing. There's a Code of Good Pharmaceutical Storage Practice and the Code of Good Distribution Practice. These are particular international standards that can be adopted in a country in order to guide the quality, which also must be supervised by a regulatory agency that is sufficiently resourced to be able to follow up the application of those standards in country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. The next question is on challenges to meet regulatory requirements during manufacturing process of OSD, injectables, etc.
Yeah. So I think that was from someone from industry, and I'm just trying to read quickly. So often there is a situation where industry comes concerned about perhaps the burdensome nature of regulation. And what we need to understand is the purpose of regulation is to ensure safety of medications. I do hear and I do understand that in some geographies, the time from putting an application in to when it's been approved can appear too long. This is recognized in a number of environments. And so in many countries now, there is this greater push to improve the maturity of national regulatory authorities, to be able to improve the efficiency through the use of technologies, and to be able to improve the dialogue between industry, pharmaceutical industry, the manufacturers, between the governments, and between the users, in order to make those systems more efficient. Not there yet, on the way, but a national regulatory authority that is working properly is essential for good quality medicines to be available to ensure reduced risk. And they're working towards reducing that burden over time. Thank you.
In what way your organization or MSH want to support pharmacists, especially African pharmacists?
Fantastic. Thank you for that question. So at the end of the slides, which I'll provide to UNITAR and Empower as they share out, I got very excited, and I've got 8 slides of hot linked resources. In the chat just now, I've put in a link to something that's called the Pharmaceutical Systems Skills Exchange. This is a series of material that we have open access that gives detailed understanding of 9 topics from that medicines pathway. So what MSH has been doing is, with funding from historically USAID, Gates, and others, developing a range of resources for that purpose, and they will be available. Separately, we've been working with other organizations, and Empower is a good one where we've been helping them develop quality materials. Some people say, well, why aren't the Empower courses free? Nothing's free. Someone's got to pay for it at some stage. And what we've done is help to add material to some of Empower's courses so that the overall cost for delivering that material is reduced. So there's some of the things that we're doing, and I would commend the extra resources to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. What do you think should be done to increase the number of African countries that have attained WHO GBT ML3? Because currently there are only a limited number of countries.
There are a limited but growing number. Tanzania, Ghana, Rwanda, others. There are recent reports, if you have a look in the WHO website for regulation, to show some maturing in terms of level 3. There is also the Africa-wide movement to try and improve reliance, which is sharing of data, and if one country has done an assessment, to rely on that data, and harmonization, to have systems and so on together. So there's a national Africa NRA that is being worked towards. People are saying that's not happening fast enough. The people are working towards it. There's a number of European, US, and other donors who have been cooperating to try and make that a reality. And that's a watch this space. So things in play. It's recognized that efficiencies need to be improved. And if you look on the website from WHO, you'll see in the last 12 months, for example, some NRAs moving to level 3, which is a stable NRA. We're happy when we get to level 3. We're super excited if we can get to 4. Thank you.
We have time for a couple of more questions. What can you say about the proportion of health development resources dedicated to pharma systems strengthening as compared with other thematic areas of the health system?
This is a very good question. And as of today, less than 4 weeks ago, for those of you watching the news. So I don't know exactly what the amount is, but we as MSH for the past 50 years have been fighting for donors to put investments into pharmaceutical system strengthening. I know one of my colleagues from Global Fund is on the call. He might want to put something in the chat, but I know that they invest in strengthening of pharmaceutical systems. I know that Gavi, particularly around vaccines and systems to support products and vaccines for quality, are involved in that as well, as are other donors. So I've got a percentage, but in a world that's moving towards an environment of less donor funding, pharmaceutical systems and supply chain are going to be fighting even harder for the small amount of dollars that are around. And it's presentations like this and the advocacy video, which is there, that video that I showed you, freely available. It's designed to share with your colleagues in the Ministry of Health to say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we need to be investing in pharmacy systems. This is why. Thank you.
And the last question would be, what can member states do differently to earn political and judicial support to build or strengthen regulatory systems?
Fantastic. And I think advocacy, one of the things that we've learned is that the Ministry of Health has to have an excellent relationship with the Ministry of Finance if you're going to get the resources you need to get work done, right? And my question is, do those in the Ministry of Health that understand the need for pharmacy systems, do they have the advocacy skills and also the data they need to be able to show the return on investment and the safety reasons why investing in pharmaceutical systems are important? And with reduced donor funding over time, this advocacy role to really lobby for increased funding, governments, particularly ministries of health, will need these skills of advocacy, data analysis in order to do that better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Before we wrap up, I would like to invite participants to share your feedback on the session using the poll that should be appearing on your screens right now.
And just while people are doing that, just to say there was a bunch of other questions in the chat. I'm not sure if there's opportunity for me to answer those offline and share the answers later, but I would be happy to do so if that allows.
We can share Dr. Brown's email account. What's your preferred? Yeah, with participants and the slides too. I think there were many questions about sharing the slides.
Yeah, so I'll share the slides with Harpreet and Sonia, who will be able to share them with you to share with all the participants who registered. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. We'll be sharing the slides. We'll be sharing the links to today's video that was live streamed on UNITAR's YouTube page. And there will also be a link to the courses offered by Empower School of Health and UNITAR on pharmaceutical management.
Thank you, Suyona. Thank you, Andrew.
We have answers coming in. Thank you so much, participants, for your engagement. Out of 50 participants who answered the poll questions, 95% said the information was useful, and 97% are interested in exploring health courses. And the the trainings they're interested in are mainly pharmaceutical management, followed by data management and supply chain, and global health. Most of the participants are interested in online certificate courses, followed by master's courses and PGD. People are looking to grow within their organization in supply chain and in new organizations with the UN too. Okay, 1 more minute to complete the poll.
And just if I may, just to thank everyone for taking their time to engage in this. I'm sure you'll find the resources helpful, and just all of you on this call have a role to play, as the Advocates Visio pointed out. And part of our role at MSH, Empower and others, is to help equip you with what you need for that purpose. So these resources will help you for that, but please, my email is also there, and don't hesitate to email if you have further questions. Again, I'd like to thank UNITAR and Empower on behalf of MSH and my colleagues for the opportunity today, and I'm glad to see that participants found this very helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the incredible value brought to us by both of the speakers today, and including especially our keynote speaker, Dr. Andrew Brown. With that, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you for everyone for participating, for joining today, and our organizing team for making this session possible. We hope to see you again in 2 weeks for our next webinar with Empower School of Health and UNITAR. Thank you all.